All right.
All
We're
right.
talking about
Just
Aaron.
need some video here. Troy Haynes, what's up, man?
Hmm. I'm good, sir. How are you?
Excellent. Life's good.
Life is good. I've been telling everybody about your background, your education at Michigan State, and told them how you were my first podcast. So we've kind of come full circle. It's been a couple of years, I think, and I didn't get to the part about I talked about your education, and then high school athletics. I remember football and track. You told me about, and then you went off to Michigan State. You got your degree, and then you left Michigan State and started becoming a strength and conditioning coach at the high school level. Was that right for a while?
Correct?
And kind of got the itch to start doing something with your athleticism again, and then became an arena football player, right? Is that's pretty much how that went. And you were continuing to give that a shot all the way up until last year. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so then after that ended, did you play the whole season again? Another season?
Yeah, so I got brought in by the Albany Empire last year, probably like a third of the way into the season. Got brought in, ended up playing, finishing out the season. We won a championship, got a ring, and decided I was gonna hang up the cleats.
All right. Yeah. Before the pounding got too much at the tender young age of 20, you 29? How old are you now?
I'm 30.
Just turned 30. All right. And
Yep.
then, so the other thing that I was thinking about was all the posts that I saw of you gallivanting all over this world with your sweetheart, your girlfriend and fiance at the time. Have you guys made any plans yet? What's going on with that? You guys get married?
We're no longer together.
What?
Yeah, so that's probably been, I don't know, before my season last year. So we've been separated for
Mm-hmm.
quite a while, but just like everything that happens, it's for the best, right?
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
sometimes it's definitely better to find out before. I would definitely preach
oh,
caution to you young men out there
that
before you
is
get married.
100%,
Make
100%.
sure. So yeah, maybe traveling around you can find those things out. So now
Hmm.
that you are retired, the other things I remember, for a Michigan State guy, you were in Colorado for a while, right? Was it
I
Colorado?
was. I
And
was
you
in
were based
Colorado.
in, yeah, go ahead.
I was just say I was in Colorado Springs. I am now after the season. So I was in Albany, New York playing. Now I'm back in Michigan where I grew up. So I'm on the west side of Michigan.
Mm, okay. And is that East Coast or Central Time in Michigan?
That is Eastern. Yep,
Eastern
Eastern
Time.
time.
Okay.
Yep.
So good part of the country way back. I know the Great Lakes and all that. And is it freezing cold where you are now?
We had a couple warm days, but it's pretty cold today. The sun's out, but I'd say it's probably 27 degrees, 28
Oh,
degrees.
yeah. And I'm a whiner. We're here in California and we're going through a cold spell for us. And in Southern California, I'm used to periods even in, January and February where it's 70 degrees outside. And, we've had a lot of rain and temperatures have dipped into the low 40s. There's one day next week that's forecast to be in the 30s. So I'm complaining loudly, but nobody listens because they go, "You think that's cold?"
Yeah, I don't feel bad for you, Troy.
No, no, I'm sure you don't. The other thing that has always done, of course, is caused people like yourself to have to do all their training indoors, which is why I when I see stuff indoors on my feed, I'm always so intrigued because I'm like, God, what it looks like they're holding these meets inside basketball gyms. I've seen guys doing high jump and in sneakers and that, and I've been intrigued because I want to do it, out here, find a really nice place, but we just don't have any need to go indoors in California. I'm coaching at Vanguard and at the NAIA level, and we had we have indoor nationals coming up, and the qualifying meets that we do to get marks for indoor nationals are all outdoor meets. So the kids go outdoors
Right.
and they get marks, and then they get cleared to go indoors. And I know for the high jumpers, I just think it's I'm hoping it's different. My experience indoors out here was terrible. Two different meets in my career. One as a senior in high school, and one as postgraduate. And one was the Sunkist Invitational, and the other one was the LA Times indoors. And they were just horrible experiences. I don't know why I trained so hard to get to the second one, especially the LA Times indoors. I had to jump 7.2.5 outdoors, and I got indoors, and you got your spikes on wood indoors. There was no tartan, and everything's really, really tight. Like, you can't get the sense of it when you're watching it on TV, but there's just no space anywhere. It's a much smaller track. Obviously, they only run the 300, and then they've got the 60-meter hurdles, and they go run down a hallway and they go crash. They've got a mattress up against the wall because you got to stop yourself from slamming into it, and it's just there's no room, and I just hated it. So I was like, but I watched these other ones, and I go, wow, that looks pretty spacious. It's this grand indoor arena with, so yeah. Anyway, well, now that your football career is over and you're not getting married and you've moved back to Michigan, what is up with Aaron Wascha? What is the latest?
Yeah, so I actually have I still have my online personal training business. That's always going strong. I'm also in car sales now.
Okay.
So I'm selling cars, but it's funny, we're having this conversation. I just got promoted to a finance manager. So going to be doing the paperwork, be in the back office, on the backside of, when car salespeople, when they sell a car, it's coming back to me. So do that. I hit the gym every morning, just like usual, and stay on top of my online personal training business. So just continuing to level up, man, in all areas of life.
Now, is that you do that in person? Do you do it online? Do you do a combination of things? Give us some details on that. You can pimp for yourself here. If someone's going to get in touch with Aaron Wascha for training, what are their options?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much away from the in-person. Everything's online. So, going to set you up with your program. As we go, we can always make changes. It's kind of nothing set in stone, right? Things need to change. They need to be altered. Check in with you weekly, daily, whatever it takes. And I'm always available pretty much. I mean, besides when I sleep, if I'm awake, I'm available for questions, hop on a quick call. And that's how the coaching aspect of it works.
Now, what kind of athletes are you getting with this? Is it the high explosive training for athletes? I'm imagining football and basketball and soccer, all kinds come to you.
Yeah, I get a few of those. To be honest, it's more so your person who's just your average person trying to get in shape. I do have athletes, but it's not as many as I used to when I was in person. That's the thing about online training is it's hard to really get nitty gritty with the athletes because there's so many more factors that you want to have control of, right? As a coach, I want to be able to critique your form here. I want to be able to see you doing it, give you those in-person cues. So when you're really trying to reach that high level explosiveness, it's tough to do with a beginner to moderate level athlete because they don't always know how to cue themselves.
Right.
So when I do work with someone, it's usually somebody who's already very experienced and they're good at being able to give me feedback after the workout to where I can stay informed on what's going on. Other than that, the majority of my clients right now are just your average person trying to get in shape, lose weight. Maybe they're trying to get shredded. Whatever the case is, whatever your goals are, I work with you. So
yeah, that's awesome. It's interesting. You're talking about the difficulties of virtual training. I've had the opportunity this last year to train. I've got two different athletes. I started it a couple of years ago during the pandemic. Had a young kid named Spencer Harris, and he real rangy kid, 6'5", was jumping 6'5", 6'6" in high school, and was a 22-foot long jumper, and they were in the lockdown and I was in the lockdown. So we were doing, his parents were FaceTiming, and I was watching through that lens. So just coaching even by remote, like it's like you're there, but yet I'm like, okay, whoever's holding this camera, you got to move a step to your right, know your other right. And then it's like, okay, now Spencer, I want you to do this. And, there's some challenges with it. Now I'm working with a kid from Louisiana, and dad is dutifully filming and doing all those things. So there's a little time lag between what you're thinking, how to get it communicated, because I'm communicating with a parent who's then got to communicate with a kid. And I've got another young lady from India, which is just phenomenal.
Wow.
She's 13 and a half hours ahead. So we're almost a half a world apart. So it's like it's either I'm at the end of the day, she's waking up, or she's at the end of her day and I'm waking up. And I haven't been very good at those. So we've kind of moved to the other ones, but that one's been interesting because the FaceTime itself is kind of, especially from halfway around the world, was pretty crappy. But then I said, hey, let's
I
try the
bet.
Instagram. So we tried the Instagram FaceTime, and it was clear as a bell. I was so impressed. So, and when I did that, I can just do the screen recordings of each jump. And screen recordings, by the way, for those of you out there, you beginning coaches, screen recordings are my new favorite thing in the whole world, because I can take YouTube videos, I can take anything, an Instagram video. If it's playing on my screen on my iPad, just pull the corner down and hit screen recording, and it's clear as a bell. It's typical iPad, coverage, and frame by frame after that is perfect. I used to take video of video, watching YouTube and using my
Oh
camera,
man,
and that gets all grainy, and you're back like you're using original video, so
that's the Stone
anyway.
Age. That's the Stone
Yeah,
Age back there,
exactly.
Troy. You
Exactly.
came a long
So,
way.
oh man. Well, as I'm a dinosaur, right? So you're a young man, you're smart. I have Barbara to help me. She's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just trying to get video." And she's like, "Well, you gotta just use the screen recording thing." I'm like, "What?" And then, yeah, like brain comes off. So, all right. Well, I wanted to get back to you about a couple things. There's another young trainer like yourself that I've been following. His name is Dario, Saisen Training. I don't know if you've seen him. If you haven't, I would definitely put him on your follow reel. He's based in Vienna, and he does a lot of training. He's kind of like a knees over toes guy. I don't know if you. I'm sure you've seen his stuff,
Yeah,
right?
for
Um,
sure.
this guy has had the same kind of a background. Dario had an ACL tear, and he was rehabbing it. He's only 19. I think he might be up to 20 or 21 by now, but he had this injury when he was college age for us over here. He's in Vienna, and so he started doing rehab, and the guy that was doing his rehab was just kind of, not really doing, I guess, a bang up job, because Dario was like, I just didn't feel that great. And he started researching and got himself underneath a guy who he said is just everything. The guy knows everything about everything, and did his rehab. And then he's, you know, followed those principles in his training. I'm watching him do a lot of single leg work, single leg plyos that are, explosive, forward, backward, lateral, all kinds of stuff. Every time I see one of his posts, I'm just like, oh, like him. And who's the other guy that I follow? Adonis Harris. I don't know if you've
Hmm.
seen him,
I
but
follow him.
yeah, a
I
lot of
have.
stuff. I mean, they're not gatekeepers, right? They're always showing stuff, and when I see it, I don't always necessarily do the research. I just can see what they're doing and go, "Oh man, that's a great drill." I need to incorporate, some of that. So, questions just keep coming up in my head, like if how have things progressed in the couple of years since you and I started down this road. I was refreshing everybody's mind about the triphasic training that you started me
Hmm.
down that road, and I have since become more aware. I remember when I was being trained by Alan Hankel. He was the coach of Doug Nordquist when Doug Nordquist jumped 7.8 3/4, 236, and he jumped on a cadaver reconstructed left knee because he had blown it out playing basketball. And they literally took the cadaver, ACL, and did and this is 91, somewhere in there, 92 or 3, I can't remember. But they did the old staple and rough it up job that they used to do, right? And he jumped on a cadaver knee and jumped 236. So that wasn't his good knee. That was the reconstructed knee that he did that on. So
Wow.
Alan was the one who taught me some things about joint stability. He was the first trainer that had me doing what this is what I understand now. So I kind of want to ask this through you because you have the younger knowledge. The joint stability that I was taught was like small ranges of motion. For instance, at the knee joint, we would do leg extensions like the last 5 degrees and heavy weight, hold, slow down, fully extend, hold, so almost like isometrics, right? Like super, super tiny ranges of
Mm-hmm.
motion. And then flip it over, do, leg curls, same thing. The last 5 degrees, you pull with your hamstrings, only 5 degrees of curl, and then slowly drop down, resisting, and then come back up, and just keep going till you're tired, kind of thing. What do you think? Not really what do you think about that, but how does the isometrics that you and I were talking about and joint stability work its way into what you're doing now? And I guess what kind of part should it be in athletes programs? Joint stability, knee, ankle, hip, wherever.
Yeah. Isometrics are a huge part, as we talked about last time. That's really the transition phase of any movement. So when you're going to do a jump, if you're not strong on that isometric, that transition phase, then you're going to leak a lot of energy out of the system. So I think it should be built in every week. It could be in
Right.
your warm up. Really just holding a split squat, holding a lunge at different points within that range of motion. You can get more specific to, we always go back to you're kind of hitting that when you go to do a two-legged jump or a single leg jump, you're really not going, you're almost not even getting to a quarter squat sometimes.
Right.
Would you
Right.
agree with that? I mean,
Yeah. Ideally, you want to get off and on and off the ground quickly. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So you can almost train the isometric at that exact sticking point, whatever it is for you. Some people's may be a little bit lower, but you look at the high flying athletes and it's quick and they're not going down into a full squat. So if
Right.
you're going to train that isometric phase, train it specifically to how you jump. You had a lot in your question there, but
Yeah. No, there
I'm just
were
going to
quite
go
a few
back
pieces.
to um, how I progressed is I'm really starting to focus on how to optimize the elasticity, the joint angles, the central nervous system versus trying to load myself under a lot of weight. I think I think a lot of times we're doing it backwards and we're getting these high school kids, we're putting them under a bunch of weight on the squat rack and the form's not there, the stability is not there, the actual structure is not there. So yes, you can get strong by putting yourself under a bunch of weight, but at some point when people get hurt, what do? They have to rebuild themselves back up and they come back stronger.
Yeah.
That's I mean a lot of athletes are getting hurt because the system is not optimized to start with before they're throwing themselves under weight. So as I've progressed and got my well over 10,000 hours of just being obsessed with how to optimize the system, it's came down to how can I use the body's natural elasticity to be more efficient, to not have to work as hard when performing a jump,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. So those are the things that I've been really focusing on, and so many things I've learned throughout my career are from injuries. Where if I could have just optimized in the first place and had somebody that set the structure of my body up before I started training, that would have probably made the road easier. Although I don't wish the
Right.
road to be easier because those injuries taught me a ton.
Right.
Every injury I come back stronger. It's because I had to rebuild the system up the right way.
Yeah.
Because the injury is almost a blessing because it's pointing out exactly where your weaknesses are. And
Right.
what do you do when you go to physical therapy? You work on those weaknesses. A lot of times athletes come back stronger.
Right.
So that's really where I'm at. I don't put myself under a bunch of weight anymore. just there's a lot to it, and that only part of that, it's hard for me to even translate that over to other people, because part of that is just getting a feel for the internal workings of your body,
Right.
how to manipulate yourself into creating that internal torque inside of your body.
Wow. Okay. So what I'm thinking of is like when I'm going through my training with these athletes, and traditionally, you know, my brain has started putting things into categories. So I want them to do some power, and power has been what you're describing. Some squats, lunges, deadlifts. These power lifts. And I know some people don't. There's a difference between what some people are calling power and strength. Like, a lot of people don't put squats in there as an Olympic lift or power lift because it's just strengthening. And I'm like, well, for my purposes, I'm just going to call it power. But, squats, deadlifts, lunges, step ups, cleans, snatch, push press. Those are some of the basics that I'll use. And I've been working them two legs on the ones that require two legs. Step ups and lunges are, you could argue, both ways, right? You're kind of using two legs in certain phases, but they're not doing the same thing at the same time like you would in a squat or deadlift. But I've trained two leg versions of most of the major ones, squats and deadlifts and things like that, and tried to switch to one leg. That's one thing I've been noticing with Dario. And I remember telling my kids, going, well, anytime you do something with two legs, almost always it's easier or harder with one. The only thing that's harder to do with two legs than one is if I'm doing leg raises over my head and when I'm doing ab work. So and
Right.
that's when two legs is harder. But, for pushing with your legs, then two legs is easier. And I've done this, for instance, with back overs when we're not lifting, but I'm having kids do 2-footed, backwards jumps over the bar, which are great. They're great for layout. They're good for arm drive. They're good for all kinds of things, timing over the bar and everything. But at the same time, I'm like, I like them. And then I go, but nobody jumps off two legs in the high jump. So I've come up with my own single leg version where they have to drive their knee up first and then do everything else because it's more specific, right? So in the training, that we're talking about there, the power, what I'm getting at is like, if you're not doing as much weight, are you doing lighter weights and then working in more of the isometrics like you're talking about to hold different positions? And then how do you bring that out? How does that explosiveness come out? Because again, we had this talk 2 years ago, and I remember you telling me you got more explosive when you were doing the heavy isometrics, and my brain just locks up because I'm like, well, don't you have to be moving to get that explosive power? So explain to us how that works for you, Aaron, if you're trying to train either yourself to do that 72-inch box jump that still I see it in my head every time I close my eyes, or get another kid to do a 75-foot or 75-inch box jump. How would you train them to do that?
Yeah. And just to preface this, I don't have a problem with having people lift heavy weight. I
Mm-hmm.
just think the foundation needs to be set, right? Don't build a house on
Right,
a crappy foundation, or you're just going to have to go back and redo it at some point.
right, right.
So just to be clear, if structurally and you're sound, I don't mind throwing some heavy weight on there. I just feel like a lot of people who are lifting heavy weight, it's not there.
Right, right.
They might be moving the weight, but the internal workings are not optimized how they should be.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, back to when you're not using as much weight, you're lifting the weight with more intention. So you're really focusing on that brain body connection, activating every single muscle fiber. Really, it comes down to activation when using less weight, putting more intention on the tempos, whether
Mm-hmm.
it be the eccentric, the isometric, or even the concentric. There's levels to it, right? How fast are you putting how much effort are you putting into coming out of the bottom of a squat as explosively as possible?
Right.
And that's where these workouts, they start to require more mental focus than they do necessarily, muscular endurance. How much intention can you put on every single rep?
Right.
With that regards, I can have my athletes or have myself do less reps but I'm doing more intention and getting more out of it than somebody who's doing, you know, several half-assed reps,
Right,
you know.
right. Yeah. And that's interesting too, because there's warm up, right? And warm up, we're
Mm-hmm.
just going easy. Like I've watched so much stuff, which I like, but I've seen, people doing obviously what I would call base training plyometrics, say in the sand, 2-footed jumps in the sand, right? And low intensity, like maybe 4 inches off the ground, right? Because sand doesn't
Mm-hmm.
give you a lot back anyway. But
Yep.
they're just quick pushes. You're warming up the ankles, knees, shins. You're getting that tendon kind of movement. I'm picturing like the knees over toes guy when he's doing his sled work. To me, that kind of looks, about the same. Maybe a little bit more plyometric than the other one, but same kind of warm up, effect. And then so, but once we get down to it, like you're talking about, I'm always telling my athletes, like, look, when you come up here to do a jump, say it's a 2-footed box jump like yours, and you take a step forward, drop down like a volleyball player, get both arms behind you, like way behind you, so you can really use them for lift and explode up into the air. I go, look, number one, if the box is low, okay, which is fine, jump up and get full extension and like levitate. I call it levitate the landing, like full exposure,
Yeah.
legs straight, right? And you float up there like you got one of those rocket packs on your back, in the Super Bowl. And you just float up and land like a bird on the next level. I'm like, now that's on a low box. Now, obviously, a high box, you can't do that. But I'm like, you got to get off the ground fast. I'm like, I want you to get loaded. And the speed of loading is, excuse me, the speed of loading here is crucial, right? So if you, and I think you taught me this, if you pull yourself down, it's one thing to just drop with gravity, right? So if I drop with gravity, I am eccentrically loading my quads to do a concentric jump up, right? And if I
Mm-hmm.
just let gravity do that work, that stores some muscle energy. And if I turn it loose quickly, that's all good. But if I pull myself down with gravity, we're using my hamstrings, right? And now I've
Mm-hmm.
explosively loaded my quads even more. But again, if I drop really fast, but I hesitate or I don't get off the ground that quick, I lose that advantage. So I'm always telling them it's like your muscles have this storage capacity that's amazing. And the faster you stretch them, the more elasticity and explosion is in there, but you got to turn it loose immediately, right? Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
there's like a dissipation, like you're talking about, like it starts to go away.
It,
So
it leaks.
it
Yeah.
leaks.
It
It
just,
leaks. Yeah. That's now how does that work, Aaron? I mean, I've always been taught that, but I don't where is the problem? Because I always tell the kids example, like, look, you don't see a quarterback cock his arm back and then just sit there with his arm cocked back, ready to throw. It's
yeah.
always stretch, release, stretch, release. You see it in pitching, you see it in kicking a field goal, you see it everything in sports. You cock the arm back, you swing it through. You cock the leg back, you kick it through, whatever. So there's always a prep phase and then it's a go, and if you wait too long, it's now you're just like a statue. You're just posing, getting ready to throw, but you've lost your advantage. So how does all
Yeah.
that work just for those people out there that don't have the same background that we have?
Yeah, it's a reflex, right? That muscle stretch, it's not even something that's necessarily under conscious control. It's a reflex. When you cock
Mm-hmm.
it back, those muscles get stretched, and we have protective mechanisms within our muscle that they don't want it to get stretched too far to where you tear a muscle or have injury, so it makes it contract. When it gets stretched, it contracts. Now it's up to us to refine that process because we do have some conscious control over it and we can train and improve that process. But that's really that reflex that you're talking about is no different than the knee jerk reflex, right? When the doctor taps on your patellar tendon
Right, right.
and it you don't have control over it, that's the same thing that's going on in a pitcher when he cocks back his arm and lets it go. Just, maybe slightly different. So the more time you waste in that isometric phase, or what is it, amortization phase? I can never
Mm-hmm.
say that word right, but the
Right,
transition phase, the more time you waste there, the more energy that leaks out. So back to your point on how much force we can put down is how much force we can generate up. I believe it's, don't quote me, but I think it's Newton's third law, equal and opposite force, right?
right.
That's why the arm swing is so important in a jump, because that's just another lever allowing you to throw more force down so that you can bring more force up.
Right.
So in essence, you're triggering more of that stretch reflex by pulling more force into the ground in order to generate more coming out of it.
Right.
Which again, this is why it's important, whether it's upper body or lower body, to train both posterior and anterior. Train both muscle groups, because if one's not strong, let's take the bodybuilder who he always wants to bench, but he never wants to do any pull ups or pulls. Right?
Right.
That's what a lot of people don't understand is the stronger you get your back, the stronger it's going to make your chest, and vice versa, because they
Mm-hmm.
feed off of each other during that isometric phase.
Right.
That's huge. That's why to be balanced is such, I mean, you got to have everything balanced in the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might have got sidetracked there, Troy. What, I mean, did I answer your question there? Where were
I
we
think
going?
so. We're talking about the speed of
Energy
loading.
leaks.
Yeah, get energy leaks. That was the big thing. I was curious as to, because you're talking about amortization, and when I hear that term, I think bend, right? Like the bending at the knee joint,
Mm-hmm.
or if I'm planting that leg, I see high jump video, where the most effective jumpers that I've seen, their leg, as they're putting it on the ground, looks like it's locked at the knee, like it's straight. Their upper body's lined up with it. So they may be leaning way back, from their head to their toe. They look like a straight line. And then as they hit, you're going to get a tiny bit of flex there. You can't lock your knee. Otherwise the shock goes right up into your hip
Mm-hmm.
and everything breaks, right? So that doesn't work, but it's a real fine line, because you want to have it straight. And when it bends, like you said, you want to be able to bend it, stop the bend, stop the leak, and get off right quickly. And I'm seeing that more and more as I'm looking at video. These guys are the best jumpers in the world now. Their approach speeds are unlike anything that I've seen before. In the last 30 years of jumping, it just seems like the Europeans and the Americans have just realized that, power. I keep telling people this. I go, it used to be the old paradigm was the power jumper versus the speed jumper, right? The power jumpers were slower. They would come up double arm gather and more like a volleyball guy or a basketball guy jumping up to grab the rim with both hands, slower, more explosive straight up, but then they'd have trouble getting into the pit because they weren't going so fast. So in my mind, it's easier to get going straight up at slower speeds, right? But if I'm moving slower, I can use more power. But I realized, and everybody goes, oh, then they're speed guys. These guys are way faster and they take off from farther out and they may go towards the bar a little bit, but it doesn't really matter because they're moving so quick. And I'm like, yeah, but power is force times velocity. So inside of that argument, I'm getting both sides. I'm getting force production
Mm-hmm.
and I've got speed. So, I'm thinking the same way I get, acceleration, or the same way I get speed off the ground. I tell my athletes, I go, hey, if we're going to measure your velocity, your moving velocity is your stride rate times your stride length, right? As you start from zero, both of those go up for a while. Your stride length is going to lengthen as you're sprinting, and your turnover is going to increase, but they both hit a limit at a certain point. And sometimes if you're overstriding, you may suffer a drop in your turnover rate, blah blah blah. And there's a way to maximize both, but they both increase for a while. And I was thinking the same thing about power. We both know that force velocity, flow chart, where it's like if I have a tremendous amount of force, but I don't get any movement, right? Then I'm how much power am I creating on that power chart? And then if I go to the other end, if I get a tremendous amount of velocity, I tend to not have a lot of force involved, because I can't move
Mm-hmm.
that much weight that quickly, right? So it's like, but all we talk about is increasing power. And I'm like, well, I want to hit both ends if I can, So that's kind of, so attacking it through that lens, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. And I want to know how to increase both. How do I get that force production? Like you're saying, I understand the not lifting on the weak structure. like you said, if there's some
Yeah.
inherent weakness and you start throwing weight at it and it just breaks, that doesn't do any good. So there's a lot of pre-training, involved there, right? As you're and learning, like you're teaching your athletes, the young ones, and even these, like you said, people that might not be athletic just want to get in better shape.
Hmm.
But you can't just, like you said, start throwing weights at them, right? So you do your groundwork, you give them joint mobility, stability, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just thinking, man, it just there's so many variables. My brain's asking
So
like
many.
20 questions at once. It's like, because there's so many things that fascinate me. Tai Chi, I watch people do Tai Chi and these slow movements, and everything's perfect, and I have a place for that in what I'm doing. So I'm like, well, if you can't do it slow and perfect, how do you think you're going to do it fast? So if you're practicing your
Yeah.
technique, so there's value in moving slow, and there's value
Hmm.
in these isometrics, like you're saying. And so to keep my knee from flexing as I put it under a tremendous amount of force, it makes sense to, hold there, and, with as much weight as I can
Hmm.
handle, or, maybe a little bit past there at a place that I don't want to get to, but that would be the place where I can stop, and,
Hmm.
and not suffer the leakage. Right. So, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
So
running in circles.
I know how your brain works. You got you were writing your encyclopedia on
Mm-hmm.
training, right? And you had
Mm-hmm.
so many. You were going so many different ways. I think that's how that's been the progression for me, is just making it more simple,
Mm-hmm.
simplifying it, and starting that's you're going to hear this whole call. I keep going back to optimizing the structure in the beginning, because it's
Yes.
like if you have if you have, there's so many analogies that I see where it makes sense. Like if you have an extension cord and part of the rubber is missing on the extension cord, it's going to be leaking energy. You can always try and run more volts through it, but
Right.
because that's there, that the rubber's gone, you're still going to be leaking. So why not just fix the rubber and not
Right.
have to put more volts through it, be more
Right.
efficient? So so now I'll start to talk about in my progression, it's everything is from the feet up. And I've never realized how dormant feet and hands, when it comes to upper body and you're doing a push up, it starts with your fingers and your hands. When you're doing a squat or any kind of movement, it starts with your feet and your toes.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been hyper aware of, man, what toes are dormant. Like for instance, on me, I realized that it's weird, but this is how in tune I've been. My right pinky toe, from jamming my foot in a shoe since I've been 4 years old, my right pinky toe doesn't seem to spread out and activate as much as my other toes.
Mm-hmm.
So the more I sit there when I'm just doing like a good morning with a band, and I really dig that pinky toe in, I feel my knee light up, and then I feel my hip light up. And then there's a certain point in that movement when I can just feel everything connect, right? The extension cord lights up.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the small things that I'm focused on right now. That's everything, is how can I lengthen the body? How can I activate, starting from the ankles and the toes all the way up through the hips, all the way up through the thoracic spine. And a lot of the movements that I see, they just don't make sense to me anymore. Like a squat where you're turning your toes out. If you're a bodybuilder, great. And you're only focused on making the muscle bigger. And don't get me wrong, you can get stronger by turning your toes way out. But that does not make sense to me within any athletic setting, because as soon as you turn those toes all the way out, you're leaking energy.
Right.
Tell me anybody who goes to plant like that would be like a high jumper turning 45 degrees out as they go to plant, stick and jump.
Yeah.
This doesn't happen, right? Their
Yeah.
foot straight.
Yeah.
Somebody going to do somebody in football who's going to make a lateral cut, they're going to stick their foot in the ground at a 90-degree angle to be able to go back the other way. They're not going to open way up to a
Right.
45-degree angle just to go. So those are the things that I think about. And then I look at nature. I've been looking at nature a lot more, of like, how does a cheetah walk? How does a cat walk?
Yeah.
They don't walk outside of their frame. When you
Right.
see a lion or a whatever, any big cat, when they're ready to pounce, they have their hands right under them and they utilize the bow in the shoulder and that's where the power comes from. But you'll never
Mhm.
see him with out here, right? So I'm getting deep, Troy, but these are the things that I look at. The older I get, and the more, and then I apply this. It just makes so much sense to where, man, turning your toes out doesn't make any sense to me
Right.
at all
No, I
because
get
you're
that.
leaking.
Well, my analogy is north and south, right? Like running backs, we were always taught you're going to go 4th and 1, go straight ahead, shortest distance between 2 points. But it's like you said, if I'm training a 100-meter sprinter, I do not want arm swing that's going across. I don't want legs kicking out. You see kids that kicked out to the side where their feet are like flinging sideways. I'm like, any movement that's going east and west, you've got to counter that with obliques in your upper body. You've got to restabilize because you're really going like this, and it's like that's totally
Mm-hmm.
inefficient, right? So you're talking
Yeah.
about foot placement and all that. I mean, there's been so many times, looking through the years, like you're saying, anything angled out. Like I'm a big believer in lining, like you're saying, force production off the ground, putting your foot at a certain angle. Like you said, I had one jumper at the high school level. He's a 6-footer, he's okay. In our league, that was enough to win, but he would come through and, like you're saying, he would plant that foot out. And I'm usually they're pointed in. I get people that are pointed
Mm-hmm.
in at the back left corner of the pit. And that bugs me also because I don't think I can get my knee drive around. So I'm like, please plant your foot parallel to the bar. We're leaning back here. We're going to roll off that foot. Everything comes up. You spin around at the top with the knee drive, right? Well, his foot was angled out, like you're saying, at 45. And I'm like, you've got to jump backwards. He's actually putting his foot out here. And the way the foot lines up, you got to push backwards at a
Mm-hmm.
45-degree angle. You're not going to be able to go as efficiently, and I'm just like, you can't do that, and I was unable to get that across to the kid. And he ended up winning league as a junior and then switched to the long jump as senior and won the long jump. So that was kind of funny because we just couldn't get that. But that
Yeah.
that idea, I love what you said about the animal studies. I remember seeing a really interesting study one time of the way gait changes in all four-legged animals. If you watch them, if you put them on a treadmill, they will start walking and they do the two legs on the same side together and the other two legs, they look like a train. So they go two, 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 two. But when
Mm-hmm.
they get to a certain point, it'll switch and they'll go across. They'll go back, right, front, left, back, left, front, right. And they start doing that. And then it'll start going into a front and back. It's bizarre, but they'll go front to back to front because they're going faster and faster. Like when you watch a cheetah,
Right.
they grab the ground in front with both paws and pull right after they
Mm-hmm.
arch their spines and get as long as they can. Like you're saying, there's a long stretch ready. And then they pull with both feet and the front feet push and they reach all the way through. So they go from incredibly arched to all the way balled up, feet, out in front like a
Yeah.
long jumper, just like a long jumper should land,
Exactly.
and so, yeah, I watched that. And then at the very end, believe it or not, after they go front, back, then they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, front, back 2. It's like, but and it's like,
Right.
it's fascinating. It doesn't matter what kind of animal it is. It could be horses, cats, dogs.
Yep.
If you put them on the treadmill, they do that. They'll have the same system. So it's like
Yeah.
we are four-legged, but we don't, it's like when you look at it, like you're only using the two, but it's like you get to a point and we don't do the Indian rain dance, the left, both right. So it's always a cross,
Right.
but it is interesting, to see the similarities. And like you said, no feet or paws way out to the side, which, like you said, if
Never.
I open up, I mean, just think of all the inefficiencies with your calves, your hammies, your quads, your hip muscle. I mean, you rotate those hips out and you start pushing. It's like you're losing so much power. You're leaking power everywhere. It's crazy.
So much. And a lot of it starts with, it's still, animals don't lie because they don't sit in chairs, right? I mean,
Right.
since I started kindergarten, I've been conditioned to sit in the chair uncomfortably. And that's just it's ruined us, honestly, when it comes to athletes. Like your hip flexors are tight, you're sitting in a chair all day
Yeah.
for six hours, maybe more, and then you get into corporate life or whatever your career is. A lot of times you're sitting down in a chair all day. It's like a cheetah. They're they're
Yeah.
sleeping the same way and they're sitting the same way,
Yeah.
like how they've always been meant to sit. So I think that's part of the problem is just our how our everyday lives have changed.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you think about the natural, like you said, how the cheetah just utilizes that the elasticity that it was meant to use. It fully stretches out and then it contracts.
Yeah.
And there's it's not just this it's not just this straight line too. I mean, there it's kind of like you think about how a fish swims, right? A fish is
Hmm.
using that spine.
Yeah.
We're meant to have curvature in our body to
Right.
when you pitch you get a little bit of rotation, and then it's all built on angles and rotations. Nothing is
Yeah.
just a straight line
Right.
anywhere.
Right.
The most powerful things in nature are always built on a curve. um, just the way it is. So I think again, you go back to opening your toes out, you're taking away that curve to where even when your toes are turned in a little bit, when you go from hip to ankle, it kind of creates that energy curve.
Hmm.
And as soon as you turn those toes out, that energy's leaked because you don't have it anymore. You're not
Right.
able to create that internal tension and torque to
Hmm.
where most people can open up, externally rotate more than they can internally rotate. So
Right.
back to me, I focus a lot on the internal rotation now of like, just trying to fully internally rotate at the shoulder and externally rotate and really hitting those endpoints to where I'm cornering inside of the joint.
Hmm.
Just like when you do a hip hinge and you're reaching your hips back, you're reaching your hips back, and eventually you hit that end sticking point, and that's the corner. So
Hmm.
you found the corner of that joint, and that's where you're most powerful to create that elasticity from. So I don't think a lot of people know how to fully find those endpoints within their joint range of motion. If that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, and I think we're just constantly from sitting in chairs, we're just compensating, and it trains certain pathways in our brain through our body. So you really
Hmm.
have to break those down and be aware of what's going on. And that's been the that's been my whole journey the last couple of years is like, man, just trying to if you've ever just sat and laid on your back and tried to internally rotate your ankle all the way, sometimes your brain won't let you do it. You start to rotate your whole leg. You can't just single out your ankle and move your ankle. You
Right.
turn your whole leg. So when I've gotten to the point where I've I spend a lot of time in my warm up, believe it or not, just trying to move one little body part, like
Hmm.
move my pinky toe, move the next toe in, but only move that one part.
Right.
Because a lot of times, if you can create the brain body connection with every single muscle on its own, you bring it back together, it's stronger as a whole. But a lot of us, you know, if we try
Are
to move our
blown right
ankle, we
by it.
move our
Yeah.
whole leg.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's where you can almost reset the central nervous system by taking time. You got to it's almost like if you had a stroke, you have to relearn how to do
Right.
everything in a from a lesser scale. That's what I've been trying to do is how can I only internally rotate at the hip and not move anything else? And then only at the ankle
Right.
and then only activate. So, um, that's not something that's necessarily easy to put into online training. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
That's stuff
Yeah.
that where I almost need to be right there with you. I need to be able to, uh, you know,
Yeah.
I need to be right there if I'm teaching these things. But this is what I apply in my everyday life. This is what's leveled me up, upper body, lower body, and just from my body feeling good. That's made a huge difference.
I'm curious as we go talking about this because I see a tremendous potential in it almost sounds like yoga, like focus, meditation, getting you in touch with each part of your body. We've got a tremendous, this body is so complex. There's so many things going on at one time, all the different systems in our bodies from reproduction to, your kidneys, to this, to that, all tied together, all amazingly. We're still unlocking little pieces of it from time to time. But I'm wondering, how did this come about? Did you read about it? Did you luck into it? I mean, how I see it, I understand what you're saying, and I go, and I think, like you said, it's difficult to get Americans, especially, to take the time. Like, who's going to take the time to do that, right? You got to really, really break it down. But what started you down that road? Because I can see the benefits, but like, did you just happen across it, like you're saying, when you're coming back from an injury, or how'd that work?
Yeah, so coming back from an injury, but also I take a little bit from everybody, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this particular thing where I'm talking about like flex, being able to internally and externally rotate and kind of resetting the central nervous system, comes from a guy. It's called, I think it's called Square One System. Square
Mm-hmm.
One System. So what he was talking about is basically that a lot of times we get locked up because our body perceives the ground as unsafe. So it perceives that force that we're about to create as unsafe. So we have all these compensations we create. Sometimes it starts with an injury. Like if you tore your ACL when you're 18 years old, you probably still have that compensation stored in your body when you're
Right.
10 years later. And I found that to be so true. Like I mean, you have to really take time and just lay on your back, and you have to. It's so hard to like. Let's say you can try this after. This was the one I had the hardest time with. So you get in a hip bridge position, right? Your hips are fully to the ceiling,
Right.
and then you raise your feet off the ground. So you dorsiflex while you're in that hip bridge position, and then you set your hips back down. You keep your feet dorsiflexed, and you only try to turn your ankle like that.
Mm-hmm.
And man, when I was doing that, I was turning my whole hip just to turn my ankle. Like I didn't have independent control to have
Yeah.
dorsiflexed and turn.
Right.
Sounds simple, but I was really diving into that. And one day I was so relaxed. I did that and I just had to relax everything, kind of had to start from the abdominals all the way down to my ankles, have no tension. And I was able to get a ton of range of motion in it. I really was
Mm-hmm.
able to just focus on that that specific joint range of motion.
Right.
And that day was when it kind of opened up because once I did that, I started to do my jumps and it felt like I had more uh, activation in my ankles and my feet. And so through that guy, Square One System, I started diving into that area of things. So that's how that part of it started. But then it just started making so much sense. Like when I would do my upper body days, I would just lay on my back and I would try to drive the back of my hands into the ground, but I would really create that force with starting proximal to distal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would create it with my shoulder girdle instead of compensating all the way down with my wrists and my forearms. And again, I had to sit there and really be relaxed to only use the most proximal muscle. That's the
Right.
only thing I needed. And then I would come together and I would squeeze my palms together, but I would only be using the most proximal muscle to do that. Um, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of rambling now, but like only use what you need to use. Only use the muscles that you need to use.
Right. So
So
this.
that's master to beginner. When you're doing a push up and you're inexperienced, you're using so many muscles you don't need. When really, I mean, you can just use the elasticity in those proximal muscles to do a push up. You go down, you know, you pull your scapula back and you use that force to bring you back up.
Mhm. So this is interesting because you've got your training. What you said to me, it struck me because the whole thing about your body treating the ground like it's afraid, and I
Mm-hmm.
can see that, right, from someone, which is why it's so amazing to me that Doug, Nordquist jumped 236 on a reconstructed ACL, because you would have to think there's a fear there that I'm going to put my foot on the ground and it's going to be even worse than last time. Everything's just going to explode. Because you ever watch Doug run, he runs at about a 45-degree angle around the corner before he puts that foot on the ground and then goes up. There's a tremendous amount of force running through there, right? So it's like there had to be a little bit of a learning curve there, because, you know, most people tell you what, it's almost 18 months on any reconstructed knee, right? Because it's, there's a trust factor there, right? You got to strengthen it. You got to do all that other stuff. That's why that season that Adrian Peterson had was so amazing also. You know, Doug Nordquist, Adrian Peterson are the two in my head that, you know, within a year of a major reconstructive ACL surgery, they came back and had career years, you know, where they've never done anything like that before. And that sometimes I think about that, like it's obviously not just that, but like the Tommy John surgery, you know, that all these guys are having with the ligaments, the tendons in their elbows that are getting thrashed. Sometimes if they just have the slightest tears, they're telling them, they go, hey, get the surgery, because when you come back, it's going to be tighter than it was before, and you'll pick up speed on your pitching, you know, because it's for whatever reason, right? And some people have, you know, it's pretty amazing. So I look at that and I go, okay, there's that part of it. The fear thing is amazing when you say that, because I'm constantly going over this with jumpers, you know, and I think it's so basic, Aaron, that when my kids come up and they're first jumping, I think the brain has two parts. There's instinct and then there's rationality, right? And I keep telling them, I go, your brain tells you, and I tell you the secret to high jumping, I tell my kids this all the time, I go, as the bar goes up, we need to get farther away from it, okay? You need room to hit your height. You know, if you're too close, you start going up and you're going to knock it off on the way up, and you'll be a foot over it behind the bar, but the bar's already down, you've missed. So let's move you farther out. And there's this war that goes on with their brains, because the safe side of the brain says, okay, when we take off the ground, I want to land over there in that nice pit area where I'm the nice mat, you know, where I'm going to be safe. I don't want to go straight up in the air and land on my head, because that would cause me to die. And your brain is in self-preservation mode all the time. That's a constant. You know, it's like you can tell it to do something and it's going to be like, okay, you know, I can see where that might be fun and everything, but no, we're not going to do that. And it's like, so I'm trying to get them to do two things. And the brain has this split running down the middle where they know you're showing, I've demonstrated it. As old as I am, I'll be like, take off 3 feet away from the bar and jump over a low bar. And I'm like, look, as old as I am, I can do that from back here, because I know that when I run in this direction, I'm going to go over there. I don't have to fling my head back. I don't have to do anything. I'm going over there. Momentum will not be defeated. So, but when they come up, man, that they start bailing to the right, and they're, you know, because their brain gets involved. And we're getting into another area here. We just went off on a tangent, but it's like, I think it's so hard to change things that have been learned. Like if I get a jumper within the first week, if their coach threw them in the event the other day, and I get this all the time, it's part of cornerstone of my business. Somebody who's never high jumped before, they go to their meet, the girl jumps 4.6 and wins, and they're like, oh, she really loves the high jump, and they don't have a coach. Well, nobody has a high jump coach, because nobody's making any money coaching, which is why they just usually leave them floundering on their own. But they'll call me and they're like, hey, we're going to come see you. And I go, great. Within that first week, they already have habits. They have a way that they found to get over the bar. And when you do that, the brain is amazing at going, I've isolated this. I know how this works. So I run and I get into the air, and then I throw my head back really hard. And then I close my eyes. And then when I hit the mat, I'm over. And there's an immediate reward, because everybody goes, hey, that was great. And high fives and this and that. And maybe you end up winning, blah, blah, blah. And now that's a pattern. All you have to do is do it a couple times, and it's in there. And I come up and I go, okay, this whole thing you're doing when you throw your head back and you bail to the right, that's all wrong. And they're like, they're part of their brains like going, what do you mean that's wrong? This works for me, you know? And I'm like, okay, let me move the bar up 4 inches. And you try that, fling your head over to the right thing. You're going to smack your head right on the bar. And right there, you've established the dichotomy, because the one part of their brain's going, yeah, but this works. And the other part of the brain's going, God, you know, he's right. I'm going to start smacking my head on the bar doing that. and and now you've got a war where you're trying to fix learned patterns, you know.
Yeah, you
Oh.
hit it perfect in that the brain starts to store patterns and habits. And what if your body had a brain of its own, which it kind of does? That's like the central nervous system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you start to store all these compensations. So when you can kind of do the reset, like I'm talking about, that's almost what I'm doing when you're doing equal and opposite forces there and trying to only use what you really need. You're almost resetting the body. You're wiping the memory clean and saying, "Hey, we're we're solid now from the base all the way
Mm-hmm.
out to the extremities. We're one unit and we work together." So you do that, and it's like you're if your body feels unsafe at the ankle or at the knee or at the hip, it's not going to fully allow you to put as much force down as you could. It's not going to store. It's kinked up. It's kinked up.
Right.
We got to get those kinks out.
Yeah.
But at every angle. So maybe your toes are dormant. If your toes are dormant, they're not spreading out when they go to hit the ground. And we all know that if you have a wider base to push from, like when I do a push up, I try to spread my hand out as far as I can. I
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of people doing push ups like this,
Right.
and the more I do, I try to spread my fingers as wide as I can, and I get more power, I get more elasticity. Your toes are really no different. If you're not spreading that base out, you're not spreading the force out, and your toes are going to think the ground's unsafe. Your ankle is pushing from a smaller base because it doesn't have those toes spread out. It's going to think it's unsafe. You know what I
Wow.
mean? It's
Yeah.
nuts, dude. Like
That is
I started going down this rabbit hole, and it's honestly changed because I can spread my toes out and I can feel my knee and my hip activate from spreading my pinky toe out more.
right.
Like if that doesn't tell you something.
Right. That's amazing because now when you think about it, like you said, you've been shoving your foot into a shoe, right? So now you get into the area of, would it be better to be running in socks or those, those they have those there's socks either with spikes on them or,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
light shoes, right? So something that you can do that or you can
Hmm.
expand everything because I'm thinking now like the ancient Greeks when they're running down the runway to do the long jump, I'm pretty sure they were butt naked if I remember all the pictures right, right?
Probably.
They were just
Yeah.
everybody was like, that was a different culture back then, but it was just like, hey, this is what we were born with and here we come, and you're
Hmm.
going to fight in the arena, you're naked and you're running down the runway to long jump or throw the discus or whatever, all these great events. But you can see what you're saying. Like if I don't have the encumbrances of the shoes, especially, that's just amazing to me. I think about those times, when my feet hurt, 9 times out of 10, I'll just throw my whatever pair of shoes I've got away. And I invariably, when I look at them, I'm like, oh, dude, these are falling apart. I didn't even notice, but it's like you just wear them because they're comfortable. And then all of a sudden, when they're not comfortable anymore, I remember looking at them going, oh, yeah, these are done. Time to get some new shoes. But you think too, like all the little weaknesses that there are translated through that, where you're just like, right away, when my feet hurt, I'm going to start compensating, right? I'm not going
Hmm.
to put as much force on the ground or that
Yeah.
the protective stuff like you're talking about. I mean, if your ankle hurts or your knee hurts and you jump off of that leg, I mean, what are you going to be able to put? You have to override some systems to run force through
Absolutely.
there because you're anticipating pain, right? And that's one thing that as humans we're wired to avoid. It's pain, because it can't be
Yeah.
beneficial, right?
Yeah. In all areas of life, right? It's in business, like you're afraid to fail, so you lock up. It's no
Yeah.
different with your body. Your body is afraid of that pain. It's going to avoid it, create a new inefficient pathway
Right.
to reroute the force when, hey, we need to go right through the roadblock, open this back up. So
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily think we should. It'd be kind of hard to be on that track in bare feet. You'd shred your feet up, but
Right.
as much as I can, I like to be barefoot when I'm doing squats or certain movements. When I'm at the gym, I take my shoes on and off as I see fit.
Right.
Uh, because as long as you're still taking time to go barefoot and activate those muscles, when you put the shoe back on, there's going to be a level of it stays with you. That activation stays
Right.
there. But I honestly, I like I wear shoes a long time because I like when they're broken. As long as they're not absolutely the sole's not falling off,
Right.
I can
Right.
feel to where I have more room to spread my toes out because
Right.
they're loosened up. I've kind of imprinted where I'm at in those shoes. New shoes is always tough. You're usually getting blisters because your foot's not formed to it yet.
Right. Right. Yeah, I agree there too. So that's the one thing I've been noticing. The older people, they say your feet get bigger. So like I went to Costco yesterday, and I'm famous for buying $25 pairs of shoes because I'm just cheap. But I like, the Skechers. I love Skechers because number one, I'm lazy. I don't like tying shoes. I'm just like any other American. So I like to be able to shove my foot into a shoe and not have to worry about anything else. Skechers are my new favorite brand that way, but all of a sudden I'm a 13 instead of a 12 for that same reason, because I can get my feet in there easier, and then I'm walking around on cushy Skechers. So I like it. Yeah, unlocking your feet. Um, I'm real curious. We'll cover this, and I'll let you go, Aaron. You're being so generous with your time. When you do this now, I've heard the widening of the fingers on push-ups and the spreading out
Mm-hmm.
of the toes when you're doing squats. Once you've developed this program, I picture, like in my programs, I'm writing posterior and anterior, and I also have a little medial and lateral, and I'm sure that's more involved than I've broken it down to, but I find my training programs get too long the more things I put in there. So it's like, the posterior chain, calves, hammies, glutes, low back, deltoids, or not deltoids, lats. So the whole posterior chain, where a high jumper would throw their head back and try to get their head to get to their heels, right? Completely
Mm-hmm.
close the loop and spin quicker, like you can see in my background. And then anterior chain for me would be, tibialis, which not a whole lot of things you can do there as far as training it, other than, the knees over toes guy stuff. But then you've got my quads, my hip flexors, my abs. And then I've only been dealing with the deltoids because I need to get my hands up at takeoff. Right. So I've got kind of a balance, calves and tibialis, quads and hammies, glutes and hip flexors, low back and abs, and then deltoids and lats, right? Kind of front and back of all those. And my curiosity for that is, how do you put that in when you're writing your programs? This activation of, this and that. I find it interesting from the is the weakness always the small, like the pinky finger, the pinky toe?
Always.
Yeah. And then how does that
Yeah.
work into your exercises? Because you say you're here, my brain went the other way. I started going more complex, and you're Mr. Make it
Simplify.
simplify it for sure. So simplify it for us, like just super basic, maybe just from legs and arms. What would you do in your workout as you're doing this
Yeah.
activation?
Yeah, no matter what I program in, whether it's for the everyday person or an athlete, there's always some sort of injury prevention built into every superset. So even if you're doing a plyometric and maybe a tempo back squat, I'm probably throwing in like a lateral band walk, whether the band be around your knees or your ankles. Um, so that way you're staying lengthened while only activating the glute muscle when you do these walks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you go back to a beginner who does like a monster walk with the band on their legs, man, it looks painful because they're like, you know what I mean? They're
Right.
all scrunched up trying to move this band. And then somebody like me, who I do them every single day, I've been doing them every day for probably 6 years. It looks relaxed because I'm lengthened. I'm only using what I need to use, and that's my glutes. Um, so I build something like that into every superset. Whether if it's upper body, maybe it's like a band breaker, right, to where you're holding at the back. But
Mm-hmm.
again, a beginner who does a band breaker, they're all tense. They're using way more than they need to use, and really, it's your scapula. Pull
Right.
apart, relax, come back. I build those into every superset. Um, part of it is you can't just take somebody and just because you do a great job explaining or demonstrating there's no way around doing the work. You got to
Right.
do the work. You have to get in tune with your body and feel it yourself. And there's only one way to do that: immerse yourself in it.
Right.
So somebody like me who's been obsessed with it since I can remember, of just how the body moves and paying attention to those internal cues, you got to put the hours in. One of the easiest ways to start to be aware of your body is just hanging from a pull-up bar. If you hang from a bar, a lot of people are going to notice if they're tight in their traps or their thoracic spine, because it'll start to kind of cramp up and get tight on you. When you can
Hmm.
just hang from a bar and be fully loose, or maybe do some like scap retractions,
Right.
I mean, even when you're at a bar high enough to where your legs can hang, you'll feel where the tightness is in your legs and in your core. Like that's the
Hmm.
best, because your body's not wanting to allow itself to be lengthened. So wherever those tight areas are, you're going to feel it when trying to
Right.
lengthen.
Right.
That's the
Wow.
best and most simple way. I spent a lot of time just hanging from a pull-up bar,
Yeah.
laying
Yeah.
on my back on the ground and trying to fully lengthen as I'm laying there.
Interesting. I think this is, to me, it's revolutionary in a way. I like the kind of the zen and the relaxation part of it, but also the getting the fine connection, between you guys. Another thing that just pops into my head is the whole gross motor to fine motor control,
Yeah,
because you've got
yeah.
some muscles that are just so powerful, and when they activate, they move you pretty much in a gross direction, but quickly that way. And then you've got the controllers, the real fine. You watch a concert pianist at work, and you go, "Man, I didn't know fingers could do that." It's like my fingers can't do
Yeah,
that. It's like it's really complex. So, and realizing, like you said, you can do that, with your toes. I think, was it? Uh, it was Kill Bill. Kill Bill
oh
was,
yeah.
trying to make the toes move.
That I am so glad you brought that up, Troy. I used to think about that, how she had to really think about how to move that one toe. That's
Right.
that's the same stuff I'm doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not as easy as you think. Like, yeah, we can wiggle our foot and all of our toes together, but can you wiggle just one toe? Are
Right.
you are you in touch enough to wiggle just one toe? And it's a hell of a lot harder than you think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I find that it's amazing when you think of. I just think it comes down to so much that we're always in a hurry. It's like, what's
thank you.
expedient? What's the quickest way I can get this done? And when you put it in gross terms like that, getting something done, it's almost like, how can I get this workout done? It's like, well, you can rush it. You can speed the whole thing up. It's like 5-minute abs. What was it in something about Mary?
Peen-
and big revolution was, hey, I'll do 6-minute abs. That's my system is 7-minute
yeah.
abs. And it's like, okay, we don't even like to spend that long. It's like I've seen these things on the internet now for, like you're saying, people sit in chairs all day. It's like, okay, let's start doing a workout for sitting in a chair, which
Mm-hmm.
is brilliant in its own way. You're just like, okay, so you're going to sell something to the couch potatoes or the chair workers to get them working, instead of just sitting there. I'm like, well, more power to you, because that's a great idea. But at the same time, like you're saying, it's like, I'm sitting here with my hips already locked. How am I going to work? So
Yeah.
it's revolutionary in its simplicity with lots of applications. So that's where my brain is like, I'm
Yeah.
glad
And
there's someone like you to go, here's maybe five stock movements, like you're saying, the hanging from the bar,
mm-hmm.
the laying here, activating the toes and the fingers.
Yeah. So with all of that being said, you don't have to be able to dedicate 45 minutes to laying on the ground. You can just do 5 minutes before a workout. Focus on stretching your arms all the way above your head and totally flexing your toes and just getting lengthened. And when you do that, again, your body's going to tell you exactly where you're tight at. You might
Yeah.
go to try to fully stretch out, toes pointed, arms above your head, and maybe your scapula's locking up. Okay, you're tight in the upper body. Maybe you feel a little bit of collapsing in your abdominal, like that's where it's tight. So it's just becoming more aware. It doesn't mean you have to spend 45 minutes
Right.
laying on the ground in Zen. But when I take that 5 to 10 minutes when I am in a hurry, because I work out before my job now, when I am in a hurry, I just take 5 to 10 minutes to, it does sound Zen, but check in with, hey, where am I tight at? And I take some time to loosen that up, and I might work on different areas every day. But then when I go to complete the strength part of my workout, I'm better because my
Yeah.
body's not kinked up. I've got those kinks out. I'm more of a aligned system than having all these compensations.
Wow.
Uh, yeah,
That's
and that's not sexy this in this day and age. Everybody wants quick results, but
sure.
I'm just here. I'm just here to tell you a lot of the stuff that I can do. It hasn't came from sitting there, bench pressing and doing all this. I take time to focus on those smaller things, and then I come back and my bench press is stronger, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm jumping more efficiently, and I'm doing single leg bounds more efficiently
Right.
because my body perceives the ground is safe. I have the right structure in place, and it becomes easy,
Yeah.
which is why the master of anything makes it look easy. Bruce Lee makes it look easy because he's like water, because he's done it so many times. He is maximum efficiency.
Right.
So that's just the process of seeking efficiency is what will take you to the next level. So that's where I'm taking a step back to take a step forward. Yeah, I could squat 315 and move all this heavy weight and probably get more explosive, but why not do the other stuff first and then add weight in
Mm-hmm.
and just level up even more with
Yeah.
no pain and no injury, mind you.
Right. Yeah. Well, man, it sounds like a great book.
It's
I'm trying
a
to get
lot to
you.
chew on.
Yeah, I'm trying to get you to write the book so I can read it. Now you know my brain does the same thing. There's all these the whole area of this idea because you've opened this up, but I talk about it all the time. Like I said, this learning, how we learn, how we apply, the motor systems, all these things. Like I tell the kids, I'm like, we're putting in a new movement. Say I watch somebody, I'm like, you know what? You would be a really good single armor. Like you run up and you're not really good at getting both arms in there anyway. This one's already starting to creep up here and you're getting this. I'm like, let's get this arm all the way up. And then you just run off the ground European. And I drill it right from the start. I just have them stand there with their foot on the ground, this arm up, and then I'll go, okay, now let's go through the takeoff. So you're already in the right position. We go from here. So, okay, we do like 10, 15 of those in a row. I said, now take a step back. So they're here and they step back here. And I'm like, so what do we just do? I said, that movement is exactly what's going to happen as you go to take off, right? You're just going to switch and go. So all we've added is one step. And you watch, and that arm will creep back down. They'll try to use it again as a double. And I'm like, and then you start to see the systems that have been in place because it's like, here's this
Mm-hmm.
new pattern that you're introducing. You make it simple, they can repeat it. And then you change one thing, just add a step. And all of a sudden, it's a whole new movement. And their brain, when you say, okay, now let's jump from here, their brain goes, well, what have we done the most? Or it doesn't even ask that question. It just, I think sometimes it's like the Terminator. Like if you ever watch the original Arnold Schwarzenegger, there's one time where the guy comes up and he goes, hey, what do you got a dead cat in there or something, buddy? And he's in there repairing the systems and they show
Yeah.
possible responses, right? And the first one is F you, buddy. And the second one is this, that. And it goes up and down really quick, like it's scanning. And then it picks one. And he goes, F you, you whatever. And it's like, okay, I think our brains do the same thing. If I give you an open command and I go, jump over the bar, and I give you one step, your brain quickly analyzes a ton of stuff. How far away am I? What speed am I moving at? This, that, and the other thing. What have I done in the past? And it comes up with, oh, he means this. And it picks. But
Mm-hmm.
on this list, I think there's a hierarchy of the most often used program. Just like any other thing. Like if I open up a program, my Google Sheets, and it says I go to open, it'll say, do you mean this one? You were just working on
Mm-hmm.
this yesterday, right? Or do you mean this one? You worked on that last week. So it's like, if I say move, it's going to go, oh, do you mean like this? Because this is what we do all the time. And it's just going to default there. And that's what you get. And I'm like, we just went over the single arm. Why'd you go back to two? It's like, well,
Right.
they've done two 100 times. They've done one 10 times because you just showed them. So it's just amazing to me how rigid sometimes and how quickly these things get associated in there, these patterns, both good and bad, so
Oh yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
harder to get rid of stuff that's been in there longer. Obviously, you talk about
Mm-hmm.
things like Tiger Woods, these, swing changes. I remember, first of all, Tiger Woods said he's changing a swing. Everybody goes, why? You're winning everything. Well, he wasn't happy one time, and he said, I won this tournament. I only had my C game. And a bunch of people got upset because they're like, I'm playing my A game. You beat me with your C game. But then when he did finish those fixes, all of a sudden he went on another tear where he was winning everything again. And it's like, but he would talk about the fact that, from 100 yards out, he's going to hit a wedge, and all of a sudden the old swing came back and he would
Mm-hmm.
pull it left, and it's like the muscle memory in there, it takes a long time to root things out and lay down the new
It
stuff,
does.
you know. So yeah, when you start talking about things like this, where the brain activation here and there, like I see that practically every day, in a jump workout or a sprint workout or, whatever, when you're just like, okay, no, we gotta ditch that and we gotta change it to here, and it's so difficult sometimes, like pulling teeth. And I've come up with these analogies like the frog in the hot water pot, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's weird, but every once in a while you can suggest a change to someone and they just implement it. It's done. They just do it. And you're like, yeah, that's it. Do that. And then they do it again. You're like, oh God, this is great. You did it 2 times in a row. Now maybe there's a pattern, let's go again.
Yeah.
And so it's like the shock value, but then other people, if you throw for those of you that haven't heard this before, you take a frog and there's a hot boiling pot of water, you throw the frog in there, he'll jump out. It's like, no, that's too hot. But if you sit a frog in a pot of water that's, comfortable, and you slowly start heating it, they'll just sit in there and they don't notice anything's changing, and they'll end up cooked. And so I tried to use that analogy both ways. I said some people can be the one where the shock takes and they just implement something new. But I said I think most of us learn like the slowly cooking frog that just, gradually over time, slight little changes that I don't notice so that I don't react negatively. I'm still working on the analogy, but it's I just find it interesting that it's opened up a whole nother thing. Like sometimes I think, am I a neuroscientist? Like,
Yeah.
when did I start going down this path?
Yeah. It's yeah, I don't know at what level that comes in. You have to have some level to experience to be in tune with your body to even make some of the changes I'm talking about.
Right.
But I think it could be introduced a little bit earlier than, hey, I found a little bit later in my career now after I mean, I'm still going to be an athlete, but
Yeah.
I've just seen how profound it is. And it's not sexy, so people don't want to take the time to do it. But if I told you it could level you up to a place
Mm-hmm.
you never even thought you could feel this good, like it
Yeah.
might be worth putting a little bit of time into it.
Well, and this is the last thing I swear. I think you brought it up earlier when you said that so many times we get an injury, and when we go into rehab, and we get a good rehab guy, not your hack like that. That Dario
Yeah.
got his where he was like, God, this isn't doing anything for me at all. But you get someone that really understands. Say, hey, everything, the reason your system broke was you were out of balance, right? And they take you back and they break you down and they give you the stabilizers, they give you joint stability and this and that, and you start rebuilding the foundation. And like you said, I mean, how many guys, I think Drew Brees comes to my mind, shoulder surgery, all the stuff that he did, and when he came back he was better than he was before, and you go, how does a guy
Mm-hmm.
get injured and come back better? And it's like, well, they were inherently weak at a certain point. And like you said, it got identified. They went back and they reinvented themselves, quote unquote, but they fixed it. And they not only did they fix it, they didn't just get it back to where it was before, because where it was before, they ended up injured. They came back with it completely fixed. Like in if you were a car, they didn't, you know, make the part better. They just replaced it with a brand new, fully functioning part. Now, we can't do that in our bodies unless it's a complete restructure, which we both know can be okay, but not as good as the original. But you get the idea. It's like it's fixed, it's better than it was, and therefore everything is better than it was before.
Yeah. And
Even
high level athletes, they lean into that. When they come back, they just don't forget about the rehab to get back. They become obsessed with continuing to optimize that.
right,
So every time I've been in therapy, I come out and I even create variations from what the therapist gave me because it feels so good and I'm seeing so much benefit that came from it that I implement it into every single workout. Like it's and
yeah,
that's why high level athletes usually come back better because they get obsessed with that it's not just, hey, it's fixed now. Hey, this is a forever life maintenance
yeah,
on this part. And then
right,
maybe they ended up applying that to another body part and they just, that's where the obsession comes in. If you're
yeah,
really trying to be the best, you
absolutely.
you get obsessed with those weaknesses
I hear it.
until they become your strength.
Yes, yes, exactly. That should be the cornerstone of training is finding, going through. You don't take your strengths, and I mean you take your strengths and you continue to enhance those strengths because they're the things that you do best. But the really good athlete, I think, identifies weaknesses and
Mm-hmm.
tries to fix those. What did Kobe Bryant do every year? He would come back with a new move. Like that one year he came back shooting left-handed jumpers. And everybody's
Yep.
like going, what? He's shooting left-handed. That's like I've been trying to block this dude's shot from the right, and that's hard enough. But now he can go to his left and shoot left, like in a game. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
find your weakness and fix it. Absolutely. Well, Aaron, as usual, my mind is completely blown, and that's a great thing. I really appreciate your knowledge, your skill set, your willingness to work a dinosaur through the thinking process. And again, this I'm going to give you a text and a call after, but I want to talk again about us getting together with Dr. Tommy because the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing that you're talking about is in his wheelhouse as well, and I think there's application to everything, like you said. For me, I'm selfishly thinking, how can I apply it, to both myself and my clients, obviously, and
Yeah.
I want to utilize that because it completely makes sense, as did our first talk, which is still mind blowing. So, hey, I appreciate you spending time in the middle of your Sunday. I know it's usually a family day and a slow day and a relaxation day. So I appreciate your time as usual. Good seeing you. You look good. You look like you're ready to go kill it. Best of luck in this current course that you're on with you're both selling the cars and doing the back office work, or are you just going to shift to back office now?
Nope. Now it's just back office. So
Yeah.
completely doing the finances, sending the deals into the bank, all that good stuff. Um, Time to learn something new. So
Yeah.
it's always good to be challenged again.
The
So
mover and the shaker and control the money. That's the where to be, right?
absolutely. But yeah, try. I appreciate you having me on. It's like I said, it's kind of cool to be full circle, first guest
Right?
and
It's
back
been a
on
couple of
and see
years.
how our conversation has changed. And maybe we'll do it again. We'll
Yeah.
do a third one at some point and see where it takes
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely. Again, everybody, this is Raise the Bar. I'm Troy Haynes, the Sky High and Fly Jump Camps, and my guest has been Aaron Wascha. Aaron, you can get him at Wax On, Wax Off, right? It's Wascha on. Say it
It's
again.
what wash on, wash off. WASCH on, WASCH off.
Yeah, and that's on Instagram. You do some stuff on YouTube as well. Is that right?
Mostly Instagram. That's the best place to connect with me, follow
Yeah.
what I'm doing. That's the platform that I utilize the most.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit too about the program writing stuff, maybe ways to be not necessarily what goes into it, but how to get that information out. I've been doing a lot of work on Google Sheets and from writing it, but then I want the visuals. So Barb and I are trying to come up with a way maybe where I can, film everything, have a visual library because like you said, there's so little time where I'm actually with someone in the weight room where I want to be able to, train them. So that I'd be interested in hearing about that. But again, that's Aaron Wascha. If you see him on his feed, you'll see him doing some incredible things, 70, 71, 72-inch box jump. And, I was telling everybody in the pregame before you showed up that this is a white guy jumping 71 inches off the ground. So,
Make it white men can jump, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Aaron. Hey, it's always a pleasure. Best of luck, and we'll definitely stay in touch. I want to hear everything as it's happening, of course, keeping up with Aaron Wascha. Thanks for your time, man.
I appreciate it, Troy. Have a great day, man.
All right, you too. Bye.
All right, bye.
So that was Aaron Wascha, and we spent an hour and a half easily, like we always do, just like the first time. So until next time, this is Troy Haynes from Raise the Bar of Sky High and Fly Jump Camps, saying have a good rest of your Sunday, even though when you listen to this, it probably won't be Sunday. And we'll talk to you again real soon.